Hello, I'm Dr. Franklin Allaire, and I'm joined today with my colleague, Dr. Patrick King, and we're from the University of Houston downtown. And this is our presentation, Teaching Science Makes Me Nervous, Examining Science Teaching Emotions. We got interested in this because we were finding that a lot of elementary pre-service teachers tended to be really nervous about teaching science. And while there are scales such as science teaching self-efficacy, which are pretty well known, we felt like that wasn't really digging deep enough, specifically because those measurement devices focus on what are called cold cognitions, to what degree do you, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, in measuring student teachers' abilities. What we really wanted to know was, how does teaching science, or the idea of teaching science, make pre-service teachers feel, and how those emotions play off of each other and either support each other or maybe interfere with each other. And that's because there is a considerable amount of research showing that strong or negative emotions can impact the quality of science instruction and then, of course, student achievement. So Dr. King and I, with the help of Dr. Anne Frenzel, developed this self-reporting instrument called the Science Teaching Emotion Scales, or SciTES. This is based on a existing scale called the Teacher Emotion Scales. And we chose this because it's simple, it's easy to use, and it focuses on the three emotions that are often cited by pre and in-service teachers as the most common emotions experienced. And those are enjoyment, anger, and anxiety. So we have been in the process of testing and validating this instrument, and Patrick will talk about that a little bit later on. And what students did as part of their science methods course is they participated in the SciTest by rating 12 statements on a 4-point scale. And we have some examples here of what those statements look like. For instance, a joy statement, the joy 1 statement is, I enjoy science, teaching science lessons. Anger 4, teaching science frustrates me. Anxiety 2, I often worry that my science lesson isn't going so well. And before I go on, I just want to talk briefly about our university. It is a federally recognized minority and Hispanic serving institution. So most of our students, including those students that are in the teacher prep program, self-identify as Hispanic or Latinx. Most of our students are female. And the university as a whole has a large non-traditional student population. So the average undergraduate age of students at the university is about 26 and a half years. And then if you take a look here at the demographics of the students who participated in the validation process of this instrument, you can see that majority are female, majority are Hispanic or Latinx, and the average age is about 27.4 years. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Patrick to talk about the results.
Thanks, Franklin. Good. So here are some summary statistics for the 185 responses we got to these SciTest items. So you can see, if you look at the mean scores, that the highest scores were associated with enjoyment. The lowest scores were associated with anger, and the anxiety scores were somewhere in between. And notably, anxiety also showed the highest variation among all the three emotions. And if you think about it, that's an ordering of scores that makes sense for pre-service teachers. Next, we're going to look at the correlations among the 12 items that made up the instrument. So instead of looking at this 12 by 12 matrix, we'll zoom in on some specific parts of it. So first, let's look at the correlations associated with the joy items. So we're just looking at the first 4 columns of the matrix. And here we see that for items joy 1, joy 2, and joy 3, we have strong positive correlations among those 3 items. And then item joy 4 sort of stands out. It's essentially uncorrelated with the other joy items. And it's also very, it's weakly correlated or uncorrelated with the other items. And so this bizarre behavior for this particular item led us to exclude it from the data set. We concluded that the phrasing or the presentation of that item was simply not working for the instrument. So we took it out of the analysis. Comparing the other 3 joy items to the anger and anxiety items, we can see that there's a strong negative correlation, as you would expect, right, between the positive emotion for joy and the negative emotions, anger and anxiety. And if we look at the correlations among the anger and anxiety items, we see that they're all positively correlated, as we would expect. And also the correlations are stronger within emotions than they are between. It's worth pointing out that every correlation in the matrix is statistically significant once we exclude item joy 4. Okay, so with that item removed, the summary statistics looks like this. So we've combined all the responses by emotion. So there's only 3 here instead of 12. And then we also looked at the internal consistency of the scales, and we're very pleased to see high Cronbach's alpha statistics for all 3 of them. And then finally, we ran confirmatory factor analysis to assess the which model fit the data best. So we compared our model 3, with 3 emotions, enjoyment, anger, and anxiety, to 2 competing models. One which tried to model the data using a 2-factor model, where joy was contrasted with the negative emotions, anger and anxiety, combined together, and then also a single-factor model. And you can see the results here. So if we look at the fit measures on the right, model 1 and model 2 fail to meet the acceptability criteria on all 3 of these fit indices, whereas model 3 has an acceptable fit by 2 of the 3. So we were pleased with that result. And then we also used the fact that the models were nested so that we could run chi-squared difference tests. And you can see that the difference in the chi-squared statistics here is quite large and highly significant. So model 3 is significantly better than model 2, which in turn is significantly better than model 1. So I'm going to pass the control back to Franklin.
All right, thank you, Patrick. So finishing up, overall, the pre-service teachers tended to enjoy teaching science, but still had anxiety, as the results show. This raises some big questions for us, like where does this anxiety originate from? How can we address this anxiety through our science content and science methods courses that pre-service teachers take? Where we think the PSI-test will become most powerful, however, is when it gets used as a pre and post survey for science content or science methods courses. You know, with the data here that we're presenting, it's really more of a snapshot, and it doesn't kind of tell you as much as a pre and post survey will. You know, and the hope is, of course, that joy goes up, whereas anger and anxiety would go down over the course of a science content or science methods course. And, you know, knowing those numbers can inform instructors about how to tailor their courses a little bit better to address the needs of their students. And it can also be used as a potential intervention for students if you're finding that they're particularly nervous about some things. So the next steps for us among, you know, our action items are to revisit that Joy 4 statement, which doesn't really fit in with everything else. We are looking at deploying the PSI-test with some in-service elementary teachers, as well as partnering with other institutions that have different demographics and populations than our own university. And with that, we thank you for tuning in and watching our presentation. If you have any questions or if you're interested in collaborating with us, all of our emails are here. You're welcome to email us. And again, thank you very much for tuning in and learning more about our research.